Hey, it's Chris. So, best and worst highs and lows of February 2024 in the books. What was on the top of the list of stuff that hit my table? What was on the top of the list of stuff I saw on crowdfunding, backing, or not? You know what? Because again, talking points. Interesting talking points. And we'll also have a little side tangent here about a couple other recent things newsworthy that I've covered as well in the past month. And so first up, let's talk about the crowdfunding campaigns. First and foremost, in case I haven't said first enough at the beginning of this video, subscribe. Anyway, Thunder Road Vendetta, Carnival of Chaos. I sort of bemused before it launched at my beginning of February, best of February, most anticipated crowdfunding campaigns, that this was going to do maybe 7 figures. And I was kind of like, you know what? It's probably just oversaturation. Like, it's probably just reviewer hype, right? One of those. Everyone's hyping Maximum Chrome, but it's going to be this dichotomy between what people online, like myself, influencers, are saying and the general public. And, truth be told, at the time of me filming this, it's about to end its campaign at over $1.5 million. $1.5 million. It's impressive. And what's more impressive is that I think the expansion is going to offer more of a good thing to give you the head-to-head sort of smash 'em up that you want, minus the race aspect. So, right? Now, the real question, the temptation, is that little insert that they're offering to actually not have you have like a extended box extender, something along those lines, right? Like, man, that's... If your insert is really good, again, this is my big problem with inserts, right? These inserts are kind of making them organized well, but at the same time, does anyone else get the feeling with inserts that they're just taking up so much of the box space that half the time you go, I kind of just want to chuck the whole thing, have a slightly longer setup time, and 2/3, half the box size? Anybody else feel like that? Because these boxes are just getting absurd. They're just getting absurd. Castles of Burgundy, Voidfall sitting next to me over there. Mage Knight, the Ultimate Edition, which is going to be the penultimate edition here shortly. Just these boxes are becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, and they're not necessarily giving you any better, necessarily that much quicker setup and teardown, because that's also becoming a big thing with all of those ones I mentioned. So I kind of don't like that aspect of things. But truth be told, again, Restoration Games put it on a solid thing. They're clearly not all for me. They're clearly not all for a lot of people, right? Like Return to Dark Tower. I'll make the argument. Maybe this is the common thread, right? Mechanistically, completely different. Stylistically, completely different. But maybe they're making the games that you love somebody else to own. Right? Return to Dark Tower, Thunder Road Vendetta, Fireball Island, right? Unmatched Chase the Dragon. All of those, you could make the argument that, yeah, those games are great games for you to play when somebody else brings them over and has to deal with the overhead storage and cost. Right? Right. And you're getting the, extras to go along with this one. So, again, I don't know what it's going to look like down the line, but they're sort of more like Steamforged. But in the sense that you're going to pay more at their retail shop later. That's where I was going with that one. Buried the lead there. Second up, Fantasia Games. Kudos where kudos is due, right? FLOE. I've been hyping this one since like 3/4 of the way through 2023. I said, be on the lookout for this one. I'm intrigued by this one. Gameplay was smooth like butter, like a criminal undercover. That's all the K-pop you're getting from me today. So I was relatively impressed. Again, final product to be determined, sort of like unconscious mind in the back of my mind, in the sense that there are all of these elements going on in a worker placement style, switch 'em up vibe, slightly different than a few other twists you've seen out there. The aesthetic is great. The slightly changing dynamic on the board it's different. It's not necessarily that much different than a hex-based system, right? It's just not in the shape of hexes. So, you know, it's creative. I'll give them that for sure, without a doubt, right? But I always just have a lingering doubt nowadays with these games as a non-like worker placement, non-heavier Euro side, that I just go, is the combination of these mechanisms, the amalgam, the Venn diagram, the coalescence of all of these mechanisms in the grand scheme of things really going to work out and really going to be what you like in the end? Because I'm also a less is more person, right? Like, that's why El Grande, that one's going to be in the outtakes. Hansa Teutonica is the penultimate, you know, sort of Euro game for me. Because, again, it comes from the board and the dynamic state in the board rather than the thickness of the rule book. This one, obviously much lighter than something like Unconscious Mind, but both of them just very all over the board, metaphorically speaking, to go along with the literal as well with both of these, just big table presence, to say, is there going to be, for you, as someone looking at this, all of those elements? Yes, it gives you a multi-variable approach in how you want to solve the Euro point buffet style of things, right? But ultimately, are you also going to feel as connected to all of them? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Is there going to be one of these areas, the worker recall, the going to the village at any point, the resource upgrade storage, having to have it maxed out in the first place, or the combat with the, you know, system that they've got there that's slightly different, fall forward style of things? Is it really going to be a hit for you? Because if one of those isn't, it can feel like a complete disconnect. And having played some of those games, you know, Apiary has one of those that I just felt like one of those spots wasn't as quite to my liking. Again, doesn't make it a bad game. Doesn't make it a bad game whatsoever, but it makes it a game where you go, do I love this? Or do I just kind of, you know, do I like it? Right? Is it going to actually then hit the table over other things? And if it's not, triple digit price points. Triple digit price points. That's what you have to be aware of. And, well, also table time. Table time probably being, if you're watching this, the bigger factor of the two. Putting that out there. Third up, we have to talk about it. Dante's Inferno. I mean, CGS, lots of money on both sides, right? Cost you tons of money, raised a ton of money. It's not going to be the biggest funder of the year by any means, but it's got a lot of money raised. Well, speaking of the biggest money raiser, we'll get to that in a little bit. But I don't know. This overworld boss battle, overworld crawl battle sort of thing that we've kind of swung into the heaviness of, the market is becoming saturated. You could make the argument the market is saturated already at this point of that style of things, which is why Zombicide continues to do so well, which is why you have things like Townsfolk Tussle, Cthulhu Death May Die, where people want one-offs, right? There's been a pendulum since I started doing crowdfunding, right? Swinging very strongly towards the, whoa, this is the most expansive, the most open, the most narrative. How many hundreds of thousands of words can we cram into this? And how many different can we, you know, even from the crawl Amerithrash side of things. You know, the creep, if you will, just like we're talking about the Euro creep. Now we're getting the Amerithrash creep. So with this, I would argue that I kind of feel like the pendulum's starting to swing back the other way, because we're oversaturated with these types of games. The Aeon Trespass Odysseys, the Kingdom Death Monsters, the Kingdoms Forlorn, the Primal The Awakenings, you know, less even so, even the minor Monster Hunter-esque, which has, again, the two dynamics of, you know, one going to one and the going to the other. And this is going to be nothing less. I mean, that's not even include your Havens, right? The Frost Havens is, and the Gloom Havens is, and the Gloom and Havens is even again. Because we're going to get another one, right? Another Haven, like in another 2 years after they deliver the next one. So it's reaching a point where, again, funds aren't going to be the issue. But how many of those games can you have? Do you really need Kingdom Death and Aeon Trespass Odyssey, right? Like, no. Like, I would gladly choose one over the other. If you watch my channel, you know which one that is. By the way, subscribe. Just randomly thought of it in the middle of the video because I always forget to tell it, and apparently that does things to people. They actually click the button, and anyway. But that's where I'm going with this, right? Is how many of those can you play? Not own. Play. Get through. Maximize. Madara. Although Madara is less so. Madara is a pure crawler, if you will, but save points. And that's another common theme of all these games, like save points. I don't know about you, but setting up, tearing down, save points, that is a bane of my existence oftentimes in these campaign, legacy, scenario, whatever, continued games in a nutshell. And, that'll lead me into discussion about one of the games we actually talked about that I played this past month the most of, Divinus. We'll get to that in a few minutes, but it's where it makes me think of that in a nutshell. In the last crowdfunding campaign, we have to talk about altered TCG, right? Because comparatively, right, we also have this. Nah, just kidding. It's not actually this. I'm storing my Star Wars Unlimited right now in this because, I got into the Star Wars Unlimited. So probably at the time of me filming this, you've seen my unboxing. And going back to chasing, though, altered TCG. People are saying, okay, you've got these dynamic tracks and you're just moving along the tracks and, it's cool. It's, different. It's edgy. It's by a good designer. I think the designer Mysterium. And so, pedigree, people playing it online already. Just like they were playing Star Wars Unlimited, weeks to months before things out. They proxied it. They made a whole website for it where they're playing the LCGs and the TCGs. So, the information was out there on how it played. And just like this, there was information out there. But I can't help that the common similarity right now between both of these is that speculative things, right? There are these showcase cards that are one in every 12 boxes. 12 boxes. That's 2 cases. A case is about $540, $550. So once every $1,100, you can get one of these cards that at the highest of them right now is selling Boba Fett, selling between $400 and $500. Now, granted, some of the other legendaries, if they're hyperspace, meaning they're basically extended art, or they're foiled, both of which will upgrade the price for some of these, more expensive ones, the Boba Fett's, the Luke's, the Darth Vader's, if you will. I saw someone post on Facebook that they bought 31 boxes. And so people are definitely milking it from the scalping side of things because people are chasing these cards because they look cool. I actually like the art on Star Wars Unlimited. My brother-in-law agreed with me too when I showed them over the weekend. But a lot of people are complaining about that too. The next set for that has been announced already in July. So FFG's probably got 3 years worth of products mapped out. It's just whether or not it's going to be continued after that or get killed off just like Star Wars Destiny did too soon. And truth be told, because I got a little distracted in the middle of talking about Star Wars Unlimited, and I didn't talk about Altered that much, but it raised a ton of freaking money. And my fear is that, a lot of people did it as a speculation, right? Like you can see it happening with Star Wars Unlimited right now, and that's a good comparison because Star Wars Unlimited is also just available at retail. And you've seen the costs kind of go up. And are they going to stay up? Are people trying to sell now before the restock? What's going to happen when the second set of Star Wars Unlimited comes around? And that's the same sort of issue and dynamic that's going to come with Altered. And I don't know, because at least with Star Wars, you can see kind of that it's flourishing. And that's the big trouble with TCGs on crowdfunding, is a lot of it is purely speculative. How is it going to stand up? FFG is an established, well-rooted, grounded company. And again, nothing against the designer of Altered in that sense, right? Or the publisher. But, it's hard to get into that, especially for the cost, if it's not going to last long, as someone who wants something like this to last long. I like what they say when they're doing the, innovative system of the tracks and trying to get further along faster than opponents rather than just the typical take that. I like the switch up of the rarities in terms of only allowing certain amounts in certain quantities in certain decks. I think that's fantastic. But are people going to buy into it as the game as a whole? Because that's what's happening with Unlimited right now. People are buying into the gameplay more so than I thought they were. I included. And that's really surprising, actually. I wasn't expecting it to be as fun. And not going to say that Altered can't be or won't be or isn't already as fun. But is it going to hit the market when you've got Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic the Gathering, Flesh and Blood, One Piece? You've still got your Netrunner sitting out there, and that's a whole different one though as a whole. Final Fantasy, Dragon Ball Z, Digimon, Star Wars Unlimited, Lorcana, right? That's a tough market to get a foothold in, especially at crowdfunding, when, yeah, you raised a ton of money, but what you need is not just cash influx. You need broad roots for long-standing effect, right? Because that's what's also happened with a couple of those, like Final Fantasy. The roots aren't as, and so it's dwindling. And if the game is really as good as people have been, pleased with so far, I don't want to see a good game go the way of the dinosaur unnecessarily. So, with my dabbling in Unlimited, truth be told, this actually has me slightly more piqued now. As much as I criticized the model as a whole, and I'm still not a fan of the model, let's be clear, folks. But there are ways to get around it, and especially as Unlimited has shown us, with the rise of the improvement of commons and uncommons, to make decks that are competitive and not needing like a Flesh and Blood, where the super expensive ones are the super powerful ones, more so sometimes, or Magic the Gathering to an extent, plus or minus. Again, not speaking as an expert as a whole, but does it fall into that trap? Does it able to stay away from it? And if it is, well, again, maybe heavier look is worthwhile too when it gets delivered. You know what? I'm also going to play it with my kids, so no regrets there. Okay, what did I play though? What was the playing of interest? The playing of interest was, number one, clear and foremost, I played a lot of Lucky Duck. Lucky Duck sent me copies of Kingdom Rush, Elemental Uprising, and Divinus. I played all through Divinus. Didn't play the expansions, didn't get the expansion, but have, now played it all the way through, and it's a legacy game. And it was fine. And I just wonder, like, how much of it is, maybe legacy just isn't fully my thing, right? I don't know. There was a lot of randomness in terms of the god battling, in terms of the objectives that it was offering each round, which was good, but there was also just, combinations that didn't work whatsoever by the sheer fact that you eliminated some and kept some in and then pulled back from the ones that were kept in later. So it kind of made it a crapshoot. And some of the event stickers were just, again, total crapshoots. It was a pleasurable, fine experience. My wife didn't mind playing it. But again, there was a couple elements, just like talking about earlier, that were sort of disconnects. The app, actually, you know what? Let's give a shout out to Lucky Duck here. Say what you will. Their app integration is probably second to none. Second to none. The app integration was very smooth. To be honest, the app integration explained things even very more thoroughly than the rule book did at times, which made it relatively easy whenever you had a question to say, what does this god power or scoring thing actually mean? Or what does this monster actually do here? Or what does this scoring objective actually entail? Because the symbology and the rule book doesn't give me enough. Oh, the app totally lays it out in detail that, would be nice to actually see in the physical form, but it wasn't. So that was actually probably a big highlight of things, to be fair. I was expecting it to be more difficult, but it wasn't. Would I go back? Would I recharge it? No. But again, I said this at the end of my review too. I'm maybe just my own bias there. Right? I am not going to go out and read a book, fantasy-wise, of my preferred, genre, again, after I've read it once. Hey, I know what happens. And so board games are obviously different, right? Because I play Spirit Island dozens of times. I play Bullet a million times. I know what's, going on. But that's maybe why I didn't play Destinies again. That's maybe why I don't go back to those aspects of playing them through when some of those secrets have been revealed. It just doesn't do it for me again, right? As a kid, you can watch the same movie 6 times. As an adult, I'm kind of I got better stuff to do. I want to see what else is new and explore out there. I know that's a known quantity. That sort of goes back to Star Wars Unlimited, right? Why I hesitated to open that for a long time, because once I open it, it's a known quantity. But before I open it, it could be anything. And that anything, hopium, the potential, so high. I mean, that's why you crowdfund, right? Because the potential is so high. So that was number one. I mean, Elemental Uprising from Lucky Duck as a second one here. It's better than the original. Better. No qualms about saying that. It's hard. it's hard. It's hard. If you want a hard solo two-handed player game or just two-player game, have no interest in playing it at 3 or 4 whatsoever. Too much spreading around of the towers that you're going to need to do. And with the location selection that it doesn't allow you as much flexibility in, it's not going to be good for a vast majority of people at those player counts. And that's okay. But you need to know that going in. But if you want a really pretty freaking good solo game that allows you enough strategy, but doesn't completely puzzle it away like the first one did, I think this is an upgrade. Again, it becomes a little bit too drawn out for me overall. And so I have no problem saying, like, long term, even with the asymmetry between the characters, even with a little extra add-on expansion stuff, and I mean, there's plenty of stuff in the base game. I mean, you could play 50 hours in the base game alone, easily, because you're going to fail some of those scenarios, anything after like 3 the first time, easily. So there's no issue there. It's just whether or not that dynamic is right for you, because there's also nothing else out there like it. So take that for what you will. The other game that I played, I mean, I did a little of the crowdfunding roundups. I did the Chroma Arcanas. I did the Massive Verse. But then, I actually have a copy of the other one sitting right down here below if I don't smush stuff or have this fall. Draft Records, Inside Up Games. I'm not sure if it'll be anytime soon. I did a review of this. I filmed it and I just haven't gotten it out yet. Just a solid roll and write with a slight different colored pencil twist. You didn't pay extra for them though. And so it was just kind of nice. My wife really likes these style of games. And so I thought it was an interesting twist on having this center pyramid that you have to connect via the colors of the use of these band members. And the band members will have like a color at the top and then like the 2 bottoms, and then it like connects to each of the other band members. So if you get the synergy of band members next to each other, it allows you to fill in other spaces. Those other spaces have there's 3 or 4 different areas. There's one area on the upper left that can only be filled in from the synergies of those, because the other main mechanism of the game is you're drafting, right? You're actually drafting, hence the name of the game. Cards that will allow you to fill in spots in those areas. But again, like I said, those cards will have all but one area. So you're going to have to utilize some of the synergies in order to get that other area scored in the first place, because it's a major scoring area. And so it's a very solid game. Again, not going to blow you away. It's not going to be like anything you haven't seen before. It's not heavy. It's, heavier than a Cartographer's, but it's not as heavy as, say, a Hadrian's Wall or a Motor City or a Three Sisters. So it's the perfect weight for my wife and I. Again, I'd like something maybe just a touch heavier. Motor City's pretty good. But again, a little heavier for my wife. So this is probably about perfect for her, because Cartographers, let's be honest, is light, just like Railroad Ink. And so, something like this is a little bit of a step up. And so it was a nice twist. It was a nice twist, very pleasant surprise from that aspect of things. And we'll go back here at the end, because it was at the tail end of February that GameFound announced, Awaken Realms actually, mix those two up, blur them a little together. Anybody else do that? I do. They announced their upcoming games, the Puerto Rico 1897 revision, re-deluxification, even though it came out like a year or 2 ago already with Ravensburger. Grim Coven, my new #1 anticipated upcoming crowdfunding game of 2024, but also then Lands of Evershade. So again, Lands of Evershade, they're going RPG, narrative, bigger world style of things. As I said in the beginning, saturation, right? It's going to be a different twist on the Etherfield's Tainted Grail style that you've seen. Grim Coven is just going to be the boss battler, just a pure boss battler. Give me the Townsfolk Tussle on steroids, right? Because that's the big complaint about Townsfolk Tussle, that it's not steroided out enough. That sentence came out the way it came out, and we're just going to leave it at that. And then also the Castles of Burgundy deluxe reprint. So again, Castles of Burgundy, I love it. The acrylic tiles are great. The miniatures make it unwieldy. It is one of the best games, though, Euro-wise, I've ever played. Like, it's up there, as I said earlier, with Hansa as well as El Grande, of games that if you said, try these games as a new gamer as a whole, it'd be those 3 games as a Euro style that I would recommend to anyone, everyone getting in, dipping their toes. So it's just, if you don't want to spend $100+ in that game, you go buy, the revamped 10th anniversary, 20th anniversary, whatever edition that is, for, $20, $25 in the secondary market, and you could be just as happy with, a quarter to a fifth of the storage space used. So about the same amount of the cost savings there as well. And so, again, them announcing that is by far and away one of the biggest news elements of the month. And so we have to talk about it. And again, to go along with that, we'll talk more in depth and the review of March of the other, Blood Pact now. Just kidding. It's tongue in cheek between CMON and GameFound, because now GameFound has already going at dead keep at the time of, this probably airing. And then they've already announced the other preview page for God of War. So we know that there was the Genesis Wars as well that was already announced already this year. In addition, there's going to be a zombie side. They alluded to a DC United. So are they going to be putting out like campaigns almost every month? We're going to talk about that and break that down, because again, the big coup with that is, as I broke it down for Song of Ice and Fire, they're making at least a GameFound is probably 50, 60 grand off that campaign. So if you say that's 4 times a year on Kickstarter versus now 8 to 10 times a year on GameFound, that's a big coup. It's a big coup, especially when you've got a couple of the other smaller companies, smaller companies now coming over as well. So we'll see. But there you go. That is February in review. So, you know what? Wasn't as prolific. Probably one of the lowest played months for me overall in the past year and a half. But it's okay. It happens. It's kind of winter. It's hard to get stuff played. It's dead and tired outside. So hard to get motivated too. So how was your February? What did you play? Topics of interest. Let me know what you thought of mine. Let me know where your head's at, and we'll go from there. So there you go. Stay classy. Have a great freaking day. Constitutonical